Cal Raleigh, the catcher for the Seattle Mariners, Pacific Northwest, baby, has just hit his 36th home run before the All-Star break, and he passed Ken Griffey Jr.
Catchers are swinging hot bats this year. Big dumper here. He's leading the league right now with 36 homers before the All-Star break. That's unheard of.
Don't gloss over the big dumper, okay? We gotta talk about big dumper. Patrick Bailey hit an inside the park walk-off. Perfect line. Like, that's got to be the best feeling in baseball. Remember that Auburn-Alabama game?
Yes.
In terms of rarity, I feel like it's got to be in that stratosphere.
I'm on a tennis bender here. It puts its athletes in the most precarious situations as it possibly can. It's almost like Mario Kart. I mentioned the F1. You're going to different lands or tracks.
Sometimes you have to drive on a beach. Sometimes you have to drive on a rainbow road, which is the hardest one. There is something like incredibly dystopian about going to watch the artificial version of the game right next to the real version. Of the game.
What are you doing? My sister loves to just jab at me. This one really hurt. She called me Jimmy Neutron the other day, and I was like, you know what? I actually don't even have a comeback because I know exactly what you're talking about.
Talk then a little bit about tennis since you brought it up, because Novak's playing, I think, or like right now, isn't he? But also, we talked about him a little bit on the previous episode. Is Ben Shelton, young Ben Shelton, who had a great interview. We loved his interview, his American casualness in his interview. He's the youngest American man to reach the Wimbledon quarterfinals since Andy Roddick in 2004. Andy Roddick was 21. Ben Shelton is 22. And Ben Shelton is going to be playing Jannik Sinner, dude, who's the #1 ranked tennis player in the world. He's Italian, okay? But not really Italian. He's Tirolian. Okay, hold on. And if you get into this conversation, those guys, they identify themselves as Tirolian over their country. Do you know Tyrol is like the region that spans southern Austria and northern Italy, okay? So yes, Jannik Sinner is Italian, just like me, my fellow country brethren, but he's a Tyroler as well. But I want to get your thoughts on this because one of the interesting things about tennis is the different surfaces that they play on. And I think Wimbledon is like famously one of the most prominent grass surfaces. Is that right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So what's your take? I mean, you guys are a tennis family, at least in the sense that your mom is a tennis champion. What's your take on the different surfaces and like the versatility required from some of these tennis players to go from tournament to tournament on 3 different types of surfaces?
I'm on a tennis bender here. I think it's one of the most demanding sports of its athletes because of the fact that it adds that element of versatility of, dynamism that isn't necessarily in the game of, say, basketball or, because you're always playing on a court. You're always playing on a similar surface. You're not going out to street ball. You're not playing on concrete. You're not doing any of that stuff in the professional leagues. But in tennis, I guess F1 as well, because you're on different tracks, but it's still concrete. It's still, different bends and such. But I think like the physical ask and demand of tennis players is insanely high. And probably the only one that really asks that level of their athletes to continue to change it up to be like killers on one surface versus another. I mean, we have the example of Nadal, right? So he was the king of clay. He won so many French Opens over his time, and it was clear that he had that locked down. I mean, obviously he played well on the other surfaces, but not nearly as well. But it's just one of those sports that's really interesting that it makes it puts its athletes in the most precarious situations as it possibly can. And it's an even playing field because everybody has to play on those surfaces, but it's almost like Mario Kart, right? So I mentioned the F1, you're going to different like lands or tracks or anything along those lines.
Sometimes you have to drive on a concrete surface. Sometimes you have to drive on a beach. Sometimes you have to drive on a rainbow road, which is the hardest one of them all. Yeah, I think that's like a really, really interesting part about tennis because then also certain types of players, their game bodes better on different surfaces, as you were just talking about, the king of clay, and just like some of these different variables that you have to adapt to. I think it is pretty unique with tennis. What do you think? Do you think Ben Shelton has a shot against Jannik Sinner? Jannik Sinner's like got a hurt elbow right now. Like he has a little bit of a banged up elbow. Do you see he fell down on I guess the grass is kind of slippery. What do you think of this matchup?
Yeah, classic England, UK, British rain, just midday. It's kind of like Florida, but much colder. You're always going to get a sprinkle. I think Ben's got a shot strictly because of that injury, but Jannik he's lethal, dude. The match against Novak during Roland Garros was one of the better matches I've ever seen. Out not the finals included, because that was insane too. But like the back and forth between him and an older Novak was just showing that this guy is so good at such a young age that it's hard to count him out ever, even with an injury. Because as I mentioned before, when you have a skill set and also the mindset, which I don't think are mutually exclusive, like you have the athleticism, the physical athleticism, plus the mindset of an absolute killer out there. Like, I think that combination is just hard to count out. And I think Sinner has it. He's been showing it. As I mentioned, him and Alcaraz have won, I think, the past 6 majors combined, so on and so forth. So he's one of those guys. If Ben Shelton wins this, though, I think it catapults him to a new level of a new stratosphere for
dude.
rankings.
That would be awesome to have another American kind of star rise up. He's got the personality for it. I mean, we saw it in his interview. Like, he has the potential makings of a star. You know, it's also, these dudes are so tall. These dudes are long as hell. Ben Shelton 6'4", Sinner's 6'3". Like, I didn't realize how lanky these tennis players are. And it's just like Ben Shelton does love to rush the net also. And just like with that height and that wingspan, that length, makes you like pretty damn lethal.
Well, we also have another American, Fritz, who's pretty solid as well as Tiafoe. So we have like 3 guys that are waiting, like that are just on the cusp of taking that next step to be competitive against an Alcaraz and a Sinner. But they have to take their opportunities like this. It's kind of like Andy Murray and what he had to do against Nadal, Federer, and Novak. Like, he was the lesser of those 4, but he had to find his moments to go ahead and win those majors as much as he possibly can. And I think that's right where Ben Shelton is. That's right where Fritz is. So this maybe is his time to shine.
Come on, Americans, get up there. All right. This is interesting. Like, speaking of Wimbledon here. So we talk about the Masters and how kind of beautiful and aesthetic that look. And we talked about this in the last episode, also just the aesthetically pleasing nature of tennis, obviously. But take a look at these photos. The difference between Wimbledon right here with no advertisements and then the US Open with advertisements all around the tennis court. What do you think? Which do you like better? Which is more pleasing to the eye? Because I do think one of the beautiful things about the Masters is that it just feels pristine because it's not littered with ads all over. And Wimbledon sort of has a similar vibe. What do you think?
I got to fall back on tradition. I'm the traditional dude. I love the fact that the Brits are keeping it real. It's all about tennis. It's all about ball. You know, everybody's in a uniform of white. You don't have to like show your individualism outside of playing your game and making that be your outlet for being the individual and expressing yourself. Like, how about you just go out there and you win? How about you go out there and you ball out and you get aces and you do all that kind of stuff, as opposed to like worrying about all this other stuff that comes along with creating your own brand. I just get the sense that it probably happens more, frankly, on the female side, just for variation and fashion and all that kind of stuff. Dudes are a little less in that realm. But you know, like, I love this pristine. It's all about the sport. Let's dial back on the force feeding of subliminal advertising.
Dude, I always wonder also, how effective are like these ads? Like, I'm watching the game or I'm watching the match and I see, JP Morgan is written like, what I mean, maybe I'm naive, but I just feel like these ads aren't that effective. I know it's creating brand awareness, but it's like they've got to be paying a ton of money just to have your name right there. It's the subliminal messaging that it's getting across to you. So it's just going to be burned in your memory. You're going to know JP Morgan. You're going to know Barclays, because Barclays is prevalent at Wimbledon. I'm not gonna lie there, but it's not just plastered everywhere. That's what really frustrates me about even the digital ads. I saw it in the CONCACAF final and throughout the CONCACAF tournament. You know, they digitally superimpose those things on the pitch, and then even in the NBA, that was just like, we're going to alternate these things, but we're also going to have the
old school banner that runs across the scores table and everything. It's just like, guys, you're already feeding us an insane amount of commercials. Can we please just watch the game and not be distracted by like all the little lights and frills?
We're headed down the Talladega Nights scenario where you're going to have an advertisement like right on the like how Ricky Bobby put a Fig Newton advertisement on his windshield. Like it's a slippery slope with the ads.
Dude, have you ever been to SoFi?
No, I have not. But isn't it kind of like that? It's pretty pristine, isn't it?
It's okay. First off, it's incredible, absolutely gorgeous stadium. Like, if you haven't been there, definitely go watch a game and try and watch the game. So to my point, when you go there, it is sensory overload, dude. There's so much going on. There are so many banners. There are so many screens, like obviously just spanning the entire stadium. Like that's what it's known for. But it's such a distraction, and it takes you out of the game, which you're there to watch in general. Not like you can go to a bar, you can go to a restaurant, anywhere else. Why do you need to do it when you're paying to go watch a football game? Like,
you know
what? Doing that, just go to the local bar. Like, I'm just getting fed up, and that's why I'm angry. Sorry, I'm going on this. That's why I'm angry that this whole Browns thing is happening. Just give us football. I don't care if it's windy or snowy or rainy. Just give us football, good football at that, which you haven't done yet. So let's do that first, and then you can get us a stadium.
You guys are caring about a little bit of the wrong stuff. I also saw, speaking of the Browns situation, not to jump around too much, but do you see those Cosm facilities? And you're at it, and here's people that they are not at this game right here. This is at whatever, a bar, restaurants, and it's made to be almost like you're simulating being in the stadium. And the Browns proposed to have this at their new facility, didn't they? And I just heard that they're actually not going to have, like, whoa, a lot of things going on here. How about we figure out who's going to play quarterback first?
Yeah. Also, come to the stadium so that you can watch the game in a pseudo artificial VR stadium. Like, okay, I guess that'll get sales and whatnot, but like, this is what restaurants and other chains should probably invest in. Like, I'm cool with this. I'm totally cool with this if you go and do this in your local neighborhood and you decide not to go to the game, because this is like, that's an experience that you can kind of get the game day vibe without having to go sit in cold weather or something like that if you're not feeling it. This is cool, but don't have it at the stadium.
There is something like incredibly dystopian about going to watch the artificial version of the game right next to the real version of the game.
What are you doing?
It's like, it's cool if I'm here in Oregon and they have one and I can feel like I'm at the Super Bowl that's in Los Angeles or Miami. But like, if I'm in the city 20 meters away from the stadium, I don't know if that should be offered. We're getting into like the territory of those fat characters from WALL-E, that animated movie.
We're like, there, buddy.
Yeah, we are there. We basically are there. So I jumped around to that, but I want to go back to actually baseball, Scott, because we're in the middle of baseball season right now, and we're seeing sort of a hype or great play from some catchers, great hitting from some catchers, and I'll throw this up here of Cal Raleigh, the catcher for the Seattle Mariners, Pacific Northwest, baby, who has just hit his 36th home run before the All-Star break, and he passed Ken Griffey Jr. I think that was I think that record was held since 1998. And this is just super, super impressive, especially for a catcher, dude, because we don't see catchers hitting the ball like this. What do you make?
Dude, yeah. There was the era of, there was the bat era, the roid rage era. There was the pitchers era. And I feel like after last night and the first half of the season, we're almost in the catchers era, where these guys are swinging hot bats right now. That is very rare. Like, big dumper here. Like, just, dude, I think he's leading the league right now with 36 homers before the All-Star break. That's unheard of for most people. And then also a catcher. He's leading the league. That's nuts that all of this is happening at the same time.
Don't gloss over the big dumper. Okay. We got to talk about big dumper. Okay. For those who don't know, that's Cal Raleigh's nickname. One of his teammates gave it to him a few years ago. And it has to do with his large backside. Okay. And the strength that it exudes. All right. And I'm just wondering, Scott, how would you feel if you had a nickname like that, like big dumper? It's supposed to be endearing. It's a little bit not. What do you think?
It would take a while. It would take a while to get used to. But yes, it's an endearment element now, especially when you're performing. It really hurts if you're not performing and you have that nickname. But if you're bombing balls, dude,
True.
this is the best nickname you could have.
That's actually true. As long as he's hitting home runs like this, big dumper all the way, baby. If you are not, and you're playing poorly and like, come on, big dumper, then I just don't think it hits the same.
No.
That brings me to the point. That is a great athlete nickname right here. What do you think are some of the other great athlete nicknames, regardless of sport, regardless of era? Do you have any that jump out to you? I've got a couple.
Well, this might be a self-proclaimed nickname that I've given Chet Holmgren, the giraffe. Bro, like
that's just you, the giraffe. Yeah. You gave him that nickname.
I just a household nickname around here.
As he's known around the Williams house, the giraffe. That's a good one. That's a good one. And he just won an NBA title, so it's fine. Giraffes are cool animals. He is very tall. Here's what I'm gonna go with. Black Mamba with Kobe.
That's solid, yeah.
Very solid. Because then it also like took on sort of a life of its own, like the Mamba mentality too, and that like spread. And like that became like a philosophy for people in their lifestyle. So like I don't know if there's been any other athlete nicknames that have kind of taken on that sort of role. Another great one, kind of underrated back in the day, the mailman, Karl Malone.
Yeah, that was great.
Pretty good. It was always consistently delivering.
Yeah.
Also, I think that he fathered like 14 children, and it kind of goes with the olds.
There are a lot of things going on.
So I'll go with those mailman and Black Mamba. Any other ones that are not just floating around the Williams house?
Yeah. I would say recency bias is probably. I do like Kevin Durant, while he's tried to institute his own nicknames multiple times, similar to Shaq, which he has a great list of nicknames. Big Diesel being one of them. Awesome. Slim Reaper, I think for KD is actually really good.
Slim Reaper
really
is
good. Yeah.
Slim Reaper is pretty sick. I did see Kevin Durant one time at Georgetown because he was like shooting around at our gym. And I will tell you what, the thing that stood out to me most was how slim he was. He really was shockingly skinny.
Bro.
So Slim Reaper, I think, fits pretty well.
Yeah. He's one of those car sales balloons that just whips around in the wind. That's Kevin Durant. That's what he reminds me of. But I do have to say, in the NFL, I think one of the best nicknames ever is Reggie White's Fridge. Like, that's just perfect.
Fridge is great. Yeah, I like Fridge. Also, not to go too far, Sweetness, Walter Payton. That's kind of sick.
Yeah, that one is pretty good.
All right, that's pretty sick. And then the best of all time, of course, Nauf.
Straight out of Dr. Seuss.
Pretty good. Nauf. Okay, sticking with baseball here. That was not the only catcher to hit a home run in the last couple of days. Patrick Bailey hit an inside the park walk-off home run. Let's play this. I'm going to play it with the audio because it's pretty crazy.
It's a high drive. Way out into right field. It is off the ball.
Dude. Perfect time.
Bailey's on the move. Bailey's on the move. And
that's wild. Probably one of the more exciting things in sport. It's so rare. First of all, like an inside the park homer is so rare.
Yeah.
Because you get the element home runs are cool, but then obviously like there's no excitement around the bases.
Yeah.
But then here you get the double nature of a great hit that almost gets out of play but stays in, and then you have to add in the tension of running the bases as well, and like the scrambling nature of the defense trying to get the ball and try and throw you out. This is so rare in any capacity, and then for it to be a walk-off inside the park home run is almost unheard of, dude. Like, that's got to be the best feeling in baseball. What do you make of it?
Catchers are swinging hot bats this year, finding opportunities, finding very unique ways to go ahead and score and to produce for their team. This is one of the coolest things. I don't know if you just mentioned this because my brain shut off for a second as I've had 4 hours of sleep, maybe.
That's okay.
But this hasn't happened since 1929 that a catcher has had an inside the park walk-off.
Dude, I didn't know it was that long.
Yeah, dude. It's been a century since this happened. That's how rare this is.
That's wild. Yeah. And I think, all right, what other plays in sports rivaled this? Because it's like, It's not just a home run. It's an inside the park home run with a buzzer beater. It's almost like honestly, one of the only ones that comes to mind is, do you remember that Auburn Alabama game?
Yeah,
They
yes.
they returned the field goal as time expired. Like, in
Yes.
terms of rarity, I feel like it's got to be in that stratosphere. Anything
Yes.
else? What do you think?
That was the only thing that was coming to mind for me, is like, or like a fumble recover, like a fumble recovery or for a safety to win the game. Like that's incredibly rare as well. But like, dude, that Auburn Alabama game, I remember vividly watching, and just I've never seen a play like that. I didn't even know that was actually a rule in football, and I had been playing to that point like, I don't know, a decade in my lifetime. I was like,
dude,
what just happened?
There's like a handful of moments in your life that you remember exactly where you are when it happens.
Yeah.
And that's one of them. Like not even just sports wise. Like I remember some really big events that happened globally. And then also I remember that I was at a pizza spot in Chicago with my college roommate, and that was on the TV in the corner, and everyone just freaking out. I mean, so I would say like that's got to be one of the only comparison. Maybe if you go to like Cal Stanford back in the Women's in the 80s when the band was on the field and they're pitching it back and forth on the final kick return, something like that. But like it's in that conversation.
Yeah. Or I'd say, I mean, I know we're kind of pigeonholing ourselves with football, but it's like a drop kick field goal from a quarterback like Doug Flutie to win a game. Like that's what it also feels like too. It's just a lost art of the game that is re-implemented at that moment in time.
Absolutely, dude. Well, anyway, it's like, speaking of football, then let's go into this, because the second season of Quarterback is out on Netflix, and they are following our boy Kirk once again. He's back in there, Jared Goff, and then Joe Burrow. And there's been a lot of clips flying around on social media. Look, I love Joe Burrow, okay, and this is gonna be a very delicate criticism. And I don't know if you've seen some of these clips, and I probably should have pulled up a couple of them, but there's like a lot of clips of Joe just being a little bit of a chatterbox on things off topic of football at practice, like talking about dinosaur bones and talking about Batmobiles. And he's just like this sort of nerdy little kid, which is endearing on one hand, but also on the other hand, I'm just like, bro, you're at practice right now. You guys are 3-6. Like, can you lock in? So it did annoy me a little bit. Have you met? What do you make of any of this stuff?
Well, to my point about, how we talked about Aaron Rodgers, and it's hard to prove that he may be stat padding, so on and so forth with his QBR and all that. It's really difficult to look at Joe Burrow and what he did last year and be like, hey, lock in. This guy was producing so much, and he was probably sitting there at that time just being like, I need an outlet and I need to give it to myself. So I'm going to start talking about Batman right now. and maybe that'll jumpstart my teammates to start thinking like, hey, be my Robin.
Okay. It's a nice metaphor right there. Very nice. I hear what you're saying, but you can always lock in more. Okay. You can't, as a quarterback, okay? As a quarterback, you're going to be like, well, I'm doing my job. Like, because at quarterback, you could do that at linebacker. Actually, you know what? No, you can't. If you want to be a leader on a team, the potential of locking in can always go higher. And I think that he could be going and chirping at some of his teammates, chirping at the defense, maybe getting them fired up, instead of talking to a trainer about dinosaur bones. Okay. That's where it just rubs me a little bit the wrong way.
Well, let's be real, dude.
What?
Dinosaur bones might be like the most innocuous conversation that you would have with a trainer. Some of my conversations with our trainers, one for the ages, and I wish I had them written down and recorded, because there were hours upon hours of dialogue between us and the other guys. So dinosaur bones, I get to how he probably ended up there.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair. There's something just beautiful about the relationship you do have with your trainers, especially if you're a guy that's like has injuries, nagging injuries, and you're in the training room kind of a lot, which I was quite a bit. You develop a great relationship with the trainer. We're talking about Formula One and the backbone of all the infrastructure behind the car in that sport. Well, the trainers, if you're doing a documentary on football, dude, you're going to be talking a lot about the trainers and that whole logistic operation.
Yeah, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but did we not talk about this? You got duped. You got NBA sent-held, NFL sent-held by the quarterback with the mascots.
Yes.
They should actually do a series with trainers, like head trainers and training rooms, and get that. Or it should be a show. Like,
it would be really interesting. It would be really interesting, dude, because also think about a lot of like the prominent injuries that we see in, let's just talk about NFL right now, because there are so many. You see like a superstar player go down with an injury, and it's like, okay, and then they are just dissolved from the storyline of the season, right? Like you don't hear about them and they're just out. It's like, it would be pretty awesome to get that whole story. Even in the Aaron Rodgers little mini documentary 3-part series, what was it called? Enigma. It was fascinating to see the parts about his rehab with his Achilles. Like that was really, really interesting to see, and something that we just didn't get in like mainstream media sport coverage.
That's what I'm really excited about this season for quarterback is diving into Kirk Cousins and his story and recovering and coming back from that Achilles tear, and then also not performing well at all. And you know, seeing how he went about facing that adversity and how he's coming out. And like, obviously from the first season and everything else that's come out about him, he's definitely got his head screwed on right. He's a competitor. He's a consummate teammate. So, you know, he's giving all the support he can give to Penix and what he's going to do down there in Atlanta, and obviously just prepare himself to be ready, you know, so that he could be the next Joey Flacco or something, come out, lead his team to the playoffs and maybe a Super Bowl win.
Okay, settle down there with that Joey Flacco comparison. That's a lot of wishful thinking right there. Okay, Scott. Okay,
a man can hope.
Man can hope. Well, all right, I'll let you have a little bit of hope there. The other quarterback that's being featured in the documentary is Jared Goff, and there we go. Okay, good. I just want to throw this up. This is just a 1 minute or so, 90 seconds. We'll see if we hopefully don't get copyrighted. Just of the segment where Jared Goff talks about getting traded from the Rams to the Lions, because that was massive, dude. And that was essentially an exile. That's like when the Lions sucked and it was like, go play off the remainder of your career in Detroit where no one's going to watch you. And I think it seems like he's still got a pretty big chip on his shoulder from that. Let's play this.
3 weeks after the last game of the season, get a call from Sean, and really did not expect anything. He lets me know, you know, they're trading me to Detroit, and I'm kind of like, oh, whoa, okay, all right. What the hell, you know, what's happening? And
What the hell?
I would say about 30 seconds after that phone call, it was on Twitter.
It is monster news, a blockbuster trade in the NFL.
Lions have traded quarterback Matthew Stafford to the Rams for Jared Goff and a whole bunch of draft picks.
Sean McVay wanted a new quarterback.
This is a boon for the Rams. I don't know if Jared Goff going to the Lions is going to make him better. In fact, the Lions aren't very good, and compared to the Rams, it's not even close.
You feel like you've been betrayed or like you're not wanted, and I think for me, ultimately, it was the fact that there wasn't a conversation had, and that there wasn't like a, hey, we're thinking about moving on type of thing. There was nothing. You know, you wish that it wasn't such a blindside, and you wish that there was some sort of maturity, I guess, to have that conversation and to be able to let me know what's going on and how things went down and why this is happening. It was my first real taste of true adversity, and your career is kind of at a fork in the road.
It's interesting that he kind of calls out Sean McVay there a little bit, saying like, oh, wish there was a little bit more maturity. Granted, let's give a little bit of grace to Sean McVay because how old was he? 35 at the time? I mean, he's not that mature of a head coach. He's just like a young frat boy. What do you think of this?
Ooh, well, first off, Ryan Gosling needs to play him in the next, if they win the Super Bowl and they make a movie about him and you know, Dan Campbell.
No,
he needs to redeem himself. No. That's why I'm saying this.
Okay. You know the meme of girls can love Ryan Gosling all they want, but never forget how much of a liability he was at cornerback and remember the Titans. All right, we'll give him a chance to
redeem himself. Must.
All right. Give him a chance to redeem himself.
Yeah. But think about this. This is look, you mentioned it. And I think in the clip there as well, like an audio saying essentially this was exile. This was like a Napoleonic level exile where like you were on top of the world. You went to the Super Bowl. You were performing solidly. And like, obviously that last year it kind of sputtered a little bit, but at the end of the day, you were on top of the NFL very recently. And then all of a sudden you got shipped off to the nowhere of Detroit to just fizzle out, end your career. Maybe get on prime time during Thanksgiving, and that's it. You know, so this is like his resurgence. After he was exiled, he came back, and he's come back with a vengeance. He's going to battle with the Lions and Dan Campbell.
Yeah, I mean it's very Napoleonic there. Just I forgot what was the little island that they exiled Napoleon onto. That's where he's born.
Yeah.
Gosh, we should know this, shouldn't we?
Well, I thought you said Corsica. Is it not?
Isn't that where he was born? Did they exile him back to it?
ChatGPT.
get this because we need to know because it's important information. Okay. Because yes, we talk sports, but we also like to blend in a little bit of history every once in a while. We want to be fact checked us. Scott, what do we got?
I am very bad at typing.
All right. Let me try. Let me see. You want me to type here one-handed? Hold on. Napoleon. If I'm right and it's Corsica, then give me a pat on the back.
St. Helena.
Damn it. I knew. I see. I thought it was a Saint Helena. Yeah. I think it was born in Corsica. Okay. In the South Atlantic. So yeah, very, very similar. Right. Yeah. Well, Scott, good job. Your Yale education really showing there, huh? You never studied Napoleonic history at Yale? You didn't know? No,
my 3.5 hours of sleep was helping me there.
That might do it. No, that was I just made fun of you about Yale because it's a good transition to our final segment here because Yale pops up on this. Congratulations. Ooh. And there you go. It is a ranking of the best college football rivalries of all time. Okay. And we've got some great ones on here. Let me see if I can. There you go. You can see the full thing now. Top 25 college football rivalries of all time. All right. And sure, solid list. I am feeling a little bit offended that Oregon State, the Civil War, the third oldest, I think it's the third oldest in FBS, is not on the list. This is Northwest discrimination, disrespect right here. But Scott, number 20, Harvard Yale. Congrats. How do you feel?
Well, I feel great and finally at least seen. Because first off, we're the original game. I'm tired of Michigan and Ohio State claiming that they're the game.
True.
No. Harvard, Yale was the original, the game. Leave it at that. Also, I think we should look up the win records and the number of wins and championships and so on and so forth. I think we're sitting up there right at Michigan. If they may have just leapfrogged us, but we're sitting in the top 5 at least. So I love to get some shine here. But going back to your Civil War thing, yeah. First off, absurd that Oregon and Washington are above the Oregon and Oregon State rivalry. What? And then I gotta think it's strictly because of the name, because it's too offensive today to call it the Civil War.
Oh yeah.
And that's coming from a guy who definitely hates it when people equate sports to war. But
that's true.
At the end of the day, that's probably the coolest rivalry name that exists, especially in college football.
Yeah. And it's funny that state is one that got the name Civil War for rivalry, seeing as how they had nothing to do with the Civil War. Like make it like, something in the, I don't know. What would be a good one? Something like Oklahoma State. I don't know. What's right out there on the Mason-Dixie line?
The Red River rivalry.
Yeah. There you go. Something
too many
like
R's.
It should have
been something like the trail or something,
fight for the trail.
Yeah.
The Oregon Trail. I don't know. We have a lot of Oregon trails, but that's all right. It's a pretty good list right there. Except the Oregon State one should be over Oregon, Washington. That's absolutely. You know what is also highly forgotten because it's D1 AA. The longest rivalry continuously played. Do you know who it is? It's not Harvard Yale.
Is it you?
It's not Georgetown. Although we played football in 1889. Okay, we did, but then we had a big hiatus and the program collapsed, and then we had a resurgence. So thank you for bringing that. Thank you for bringing up the blue of Georgetown. I'll tell you this. It's in the Patriot League.
Oh, I know. It's going to be one of those obscure ones.
Yeah, it's pretty obscure. Do you want me to tell you?
What, like Holy Cross and?
It's Lehigh Lafayette.
Oh,
that's the longest standing continuously played college football rivalry. And they actually they do it at like Fenway Park sometimes now, like recently they did that. So they actually
okay, for all the flack we got in the Ivy League, first off, we've won the Ivy League multiple times over the past decade. And then secondarily, we've played I think over the past 5-6 years, we've gone and played at Fenway against Harvard twice. Big pull, all that kind of stuff. So we deserve to be in this. There was a point I was going to make, but I can't remember it, so I'm going to pass.
Army Navy also pretty good.
Oh,
that's legit. You know what I heard? There was a great take because they put Army Navy at the end of the football season, college football season, right? And it's still obviously one of the great weekends.
Yeah,
it would be awesome if we kicked off college football every year with the Army Navy rivalry, like standalone game, first game of the season, hyping up. I mean, what's more American than college football.
Yeah.
And you start off with 2 service academies right there. I mean, I think that would just kind of expands the hype around it.
Yeah, I think that I kind of like that idea. It sounds terrible, but sometimes it does feel a little bit like the Hall of Fame kickoff game. Because it's at the back end, it's pigeonholed into the holidays. There's not a lot going on.
Right.
So I think it should get a little more shine up front. Instead of going like overseas and having Georgia Tech play Florida State in Ireland. Like
give those boys in Dublin. Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
I mean, I do love the international expansion, but it's like first game of college football should be played in the United States.
We should, how the basketball games, my dad was setting it up back in the day with Marquette playing like UNC on a carrier.
Oh yeah.
We should do a football game out on a carrier.
Could a football field fit on an aircraft carrier?
I don't know.
I got to look up I'll ask ChatGPT after this because how incredible would that be?
Epic, dude.
Little bit skewed home field advantage for Navy though. Kind of unfair. You got to have it at least close to land.
Yeah. Air Force might fare better just because they fly the planes sometimes landing on aircraft carriers, but
yeah, that's true. Maybe they'll play well there. All right, so there we have it. The apparently best rivalries in college football. You don't have to, and I have to correct myself. Oregon State is the 5th longest played rivalry. Sorry. Fact check right there.
Yeah.
All right, there we have it. Big news out of F1. Wimbledon going on still. And of college football rivalries that are once again disrespecting Oregon State. Thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.